Dr. Willow Brown and Leah Piper are the masterminds behind the Sex Reimagined podcast, which opens the minds and hearts of its listeners to the vast possibilities that exist within the realm of sexuality, spirituality, and relationships. With a combined 40 years of professional experience, these two ambassadors of love are ready to support you on your journey with sacred sexuality and all that it encompasses. Dr. Willow, Leah, welcome to the show. So great to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
So good to be here, Brad.
So for those who haven't encountered your work yet, would you be able to share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. You want to kick it off, Leah?
Sure. I'm Leah Piper. I'm an advanced certified Tantra educator and a positive psychology facilitator and coach, along with having lots and lots of various certifications with somatic therapies. So the thing that I'm really passionate about is helping people love better, especially when it comes to sexual love, how we can overcome our obstacles so that we can have more bliss in life. Because let's face it, life is hard, life is challenging. Life throws us a crisis every now and then, and we have this thing called pleasure that is a renewable resource in our body that we can tap into to renew our weary soul, baby, when it gets tired and worn out. So that's what I'm all about.
And she's a wizard at it, an absolute genius at helping people love better. So I am a Chinese medicine doctor and Taoist sexology expert. So for those of you who don't know, Chinese medicine encompasses acupuncture, herbology, many things, including sexology. However, most of us are not taught that in our master's and doctorate programs. So I took it upon myself to go travel the world and study with various teachers and learn this on my own. And, you know, my body has always been my best teacher. So one of the things that's so powerful about the Taoist, so Tantra and Taoist sexology are very synonymous. They're kind of like two sides of the same coin. The main sort of difference, I would say, around Taoist sexology from Tantra is that it is really about cultivating pleasure, orgasmic energy, arousal energy, sexual energy for health, vitality, and longevity. So there's a lot of, one of the main sort of foundational practices we use is called the orgasmic upward draw, whereby when you're on the edge of an orgasm, you start to draw that energy and that chi, that vibration of energy in your body to different places in your body. And one of the best places to draw it to is your adrenal glands. And your adrenal glands are the foundation of a lot of your hormones, so a lot of your endocrine system. So when your endocrine system is in balance, your immune system is in balance, your gut system is in balance, then a lot of your health is in optimal state. So we really love to use that sexual energy to create more abundance in your health.
Amazing, amazing.
And one of the things that I really specialize in too, I want to just say this as well, is helping women live out their menstrual cycles according to the moon cycle and how that ties together with Chinese medicine. So there's 5 elements in Chinese medicine that relate to our organ systems and 4 phases of the moon cycle. And when you marry those together, you get this beautiful system called the ancient wisdom approach, which is a phenomenal path for women to follow, especially when they're going through, you know, perimenopause and menopause, when things start to shift and change. It's kind of like putting the training wheels back on the endocrine system to get you through that time with more ease and grace.
Okay. Lots of exciting topics that we can dive into today. Before we go there, why do you do the work that you do?
Well, I can start us off on that in that direction. I do the work that I do because I needed it so desperately. It was, you know, growing up in sort of a Pentecostal Christian, the newspapers actually called my church a cult growing up as a kid. There was a lot of conditioning that had particular rules about what this body, my body, was allowed to express sexually and who I was supposed to be as I came of age. And coupled that with being sexually molested as a kid, I just had so much wounding and there was so much rebellion that was in this little body wanting to be free, was connected to this sexual appetite inside of myself. And I knew that spirit was connected to it, but there was nothing in my upbringing that demonstrated how sex and God come together. And so like, as this whole coming of age thing was happening for my system, I needed a breakthrough. I was headed towards a breakdown, and I discovered Tantra. And one of the things that's really unique to Tantra is that it's the thing that brings beauty to sex. And I think so many things were shrouded in shame and guilt and fear coming of age, that to have a path that saw sex as beautiful was so tremendously healing. And as a result of going and swimming in these deeper waters where sex is considered sacred and a way to express your body as if it's a prayer, that really compelled me to discover the full meaning of love. Like I said, specifically sexual love. Now, Tantra is a very big topic. Sexuality is just one of the pieces of the whole, but that is my focus. I think there's something that our culture really needs when it comes to sexual awakening. I think we've been through a sexual revolution, and now it's time for the sexual evolution, and that's where we're headed. And you know what's interesting is I've been, along with Willow, I've been in this field for 20 plus years, and it's been so rich and wonderful. And now, in juxtaposition of the beauty of sex, I'm now starting to discover the dirty of sex, and seeing how those two kind of come together, how they support each other, how that actually impacts us psychologically, and also gives us more transcendent experiences, so that we're more expressed as human beings, that we can really pursue pleasure without fear, guilt, and shame. So that's my main motivation, is to help people. If you're going to have fear, guilt, and shame, let's use it to actually expand your pleasure potential versus keep you down, shut down, and small.
Yeah, so well said and so powerful. And, my story is pretty similar. I went through a traumatic rape experience when I was 19. And from that, I got pregnant, and it was super traumatic. And I was just a kid. And so I was just getting started in the world, and it was kind of like a block. And so that block, I took it, and I took that grain of sand and turned it into a pearl. It took many years, but here I am teaching sexuality, because I think that, there's just a lot of miseducation. First of all, no education, and then a lot of miseducation. And so people really don't know what the hell they're doing. And they don't even really understand what sexual energy is. According to the Tao, sexual energy is your essence. So we're not just cultivating orgasms and pleasure. We're cultivating our sense of selves, like our deepest essence and our core within ourselves. And when we cultivate that, especially through the hands of another and through the mirror of another, we get the opportunity to feel ourselves more fully, to become more whole. And that builds confidence. It builds a sense of, I got this. I'm moving myself through the world in a way that I feel like I'm on top of the world, rather than through fear and through guilt and through shame. So that's what we see a lot when people come to this work, is they're coming because they want to heal these shadow parts of themselves. And what Leah's talking about is like bringing that dirty in. It's like that's a big shadow for a lot of people around their sexuality. It's so taboo to like to have your hair pulled, or like to get spanked, or whatever it is for you. But when you embody that peace rather than sweep it under the rug, suddenly you're more in your body, you're more in your wholeness and in yourself. And I think that I was just talking to a friend. I was kind of coaching her through her first Tantra session. She's giving her first one, and, she just messaged me. She's like, oh my God, I feel like I just got Tantra. I feel so alive and so vitalized and la, 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 la. I was like, yeah, girl, get it. Because it doesn't matter if you're the giver or the receiver. It's like you're in a union with somebody, and that union is a mirror. It's an opportunity for you to feel yourself more. And I think that's where people go wrong with sexuality a lot, is like they make it about the other person. That other person is going to turn me on. I have chemistry with that other person. It's that other person, or it's not going to work, And so they can really shut themselves down pretty quickly by not realizing the truth that it's really about them.
What about having this energy. So you can cultivate it, obviously, and we'll talk about some tools for doing that. But there are real benefits, right? And a lot of people, it's their sexuality is something that happens behind a closed door, maybe with a little bit of shame, maybe with a little bit of pleasure. But if you can cultivate this energy in your life, it actually has benefits for your health.
Absolutely. I mean, it benefits the heart, the lungs, the liver, the gallbladder, everything. Like everything in your body is more, because it's a higher frequency, it's a higher vibration. Think about when you're in that state of like, oh my God, I'm so turned on right now. I'm about to just go over the edge. I'm about to climax. In that moment, you're in the present moment. You're not thinking about what you got to do on your to-do list tomorrow. You're not thinking about what didn't go right yesterday. You know, you're right there in the moment. So first of all, you're cultivating presence, which God knows we all need to do more on this planet right now. And so when you're cultivating that level of presence at that higher frequency of arousal and pleasure, things are going off in your brain. New neural networks are forming, pineal glands are activating, pituitary glands are really happy, you know, things are happening, and your whole body gets this cascade of hormones like the oxytocin hormone, the endorphins, you know, those all make you feel good in your body. They make you feel open. You're more in a receptive state. And so everything in your body benefits when you ride that wave longer, rather than let's get it up, get it in, and get it off as quick as we can. Like, let's ride it, you know. And that was one of the things that I was sort of coaching her on, is like, yeah, when a man is like, oh my God, I want you, like I have this desire. It's like, okay, that's great that you have that desire. Cultivate that desire. Where do you want to draw that desire to in your body? Move it out of your lingam or your penis and move it up to your solar plexus, your power center, or move it up to your brain, or move it up to your heart. Whatever you're cultivating in your life, you can direct that potent, vital life force energy to anything. So it's really a manifestation tool as well. There is an ancient practice in Tantra called sex magic, where you get very clear about what you want to see come to fruition in your life, and you basically make love to that, either through another person or through your own hands. And it's an incredibly powerful manifestation tool.
Another way that I like to describe it is, we want to have a passion-filled life. Like, passion isn't just for the bedroom. Passion is for all areas of our life. We want to be passionate about our hobbies, and passionate about raising our kids, and passionate about our work, and passionate about our relationships and our friendships and our family and the things that we pursue. Passion is life force energy, and there's something about sexual energy that invokes passion. Also, sexual energy is creative in nature. It's that which creates life. The highest form of creation is life itself. It's not just a masterpiece on the wall. It's the fact that we're capable of making elbows and eyeballs and little hearts that beat. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's miraculous. We're all in awe of that. So if we can harness that creative life force energy and be able to channel it so that we can cultivate more of it. And when I say more sexual energy, I'm not saying you got more sexual energy and you're just going to be a horn dog acting out and creeping everyone out. You're not in danger of that. What the potential is you harness that aliveness. You do not squander it. You use your breath. You use muscular contractions. You use skills of intimacy like eye contact and connection, and you work on opening up your heart. And you start to breathe that energy that you're cultivating that is sexual in nature. And you start to allow your body to assimilate it, not just squander it. So it becomes a circuit in the system. And that added circuitry actually opens up neural pathways, allows your body to feel more pleasure that can run through it. So this is how people become multi-orgasmic and have full body orgasms. Women can have ejaculatory orgasms. Men can have non-ejaculatory orgasms. You start to learn real skills that not only make you a master lover, but make you more masterful in various sectors of your life. You can take that sexual creative energy and you can use it not in a sexual creepy way at work, but for your project so that you're a more creative creator, so that you're a more present parent, so that you're more romantic with your partner or partners. You find yourself texting your sweetie a lot more, little cute emojis and little hellos. And, you're more effusive in your affection, in your attention, and in your presence. And that just makes the world a better place.
So your whole life becomes a kind of sexy sexual experience rather than it just being limited to these short snippets that happen from time to time, if you're lucky or not. And you channel this energy. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the spiritualization of sex life. Why should people consider taking these steps to make it more of a spiritual experience rather than something that they're potentially shameful of or feel guilty about?
Yeah, I think people are craving transcendent experiences in their life. It's like there's something deep in our soul that knows that there's something more to sex, but we have no idea where to go to harness it, where to find it, how to access it. But we know that there's something lacking in the bedroom. Why isn't this more fulfilling? Why does this feel like a sneeze in the groin? Does it even matter that I'm the partner that my partner is with right now? Because they are so not paying attention. I could be anybody. They got their eyes closed, they're tight, they're far away. We're not connected. We're just trying to get relief. We're just trying to let go of tension, versus reach states of bliss, which, go to places that are so deep in love. And so I think people are craving to have awe experiences that fill them with awe. And sex and pleasure is one of those places that we can actually discover that, but it's a skill. Being a lover is actually a skill. You have to seek out how to become a better lover. And we don't talk about all that much in culture in general. We see some things in movies, but people are uncomfortable talking about sex. And we need to normalize that so we can cultivate the skills of looking at sex as an actual art form, something that we can bask in and really, really explore. Now, that doesn't mean that, you just take off the regular normal sex that you like anyways. I mean, who doesn't like a quickie during the lunch hour? It doesn't mean that you throw out the things that are already working. What we're talking about is expanding your sexual repertoire so that you've got new and more refined things to add to the menu. So when we talk about spiritualizing sex, I think we have two really cool places that we can go on an adventure when it comes to sexuality. And that is both the sacred and the profane. And this kind of comes back to the dirty and the beauty, and how we can kind of use those to have great impact on us. Because even some of our kinkier thoughts, some of the places that we might oh my God, what would people think if they knew that turned me on? That sort of thing. If we can actually be more courageous and curious with a curious attitude about those kind of core erotic themes on the inside, what we'll discover is that when we fetishize a fear in a safe way, what we get rewarded with is not only a transcendent orgasm, but we end up facing something that we're afraid of. And that fear stops gripping us and we find more freedom. We find a sense of liberation. And so there's a healthy way to really explore that with people who are going to look at it not just from, not from the shallow end of the pool, but from the deep end of the pool. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. The word itself, Tantra, is, tan means expansion. It's Sanskrit. And tra is a tool. So it's a tool for expansion or a weaving of expansion into your being. And a big part of that expansion is going beyond what you've ever experienced before. So you're expanding your higher states of consciousness through riding these higher waves of arousal and these edges of orgasmic bliss. And it's not always I'm peaking for hours, but also just the stillness and the surrender and being able to keep your eyes open with a lover, being able to keep your heart open with somebody without getting emotionally attached to them. There's different kinds of love out there. There's universal love and there's emotional love. And so, we talk about all of that. And I think that, when people start to experience higher levels of consciousness through the platform of sexuality, sacred sexual practices, they get to experience themselves as something more than they ever thought that they could be. And I can't tell you how many years I've been doing this, and I still have experiences that I've never, ever, ever had before. And before that, when I was living the more muggle version of sexuality, it was we were doing the same thing. It was always the same routine. We would do that, and that's how we did it. I mean, I was always into the Taoist sexual stuff, but even then I would be with partners and it would be we would get into these routines together. And so it's like Leah was saying, like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, if you like the good old whatever you guys are doing, keep doing that too. Have fun with it. But set aside a date night where you're like, let's explore something else. Let's explore no intercourse where you just receive and I just give. Like, what would happen if we really held that container and really held those boundaries for one another? What would we discover about each other's bodies? I mean, all these acupuncture points in the body, they're like secondary and tertiary erogenous zones. We've got the primary erogenous zones that we all know, right? The genitals, the nipples, the ass. And then we've got these secondary erogenous zones like the solar plexus, behind the ears, all these bends in the joints, inner elbows, inner wrist. And then we've got these little tiny acupuncture points, which I am mapping out right now. And, there's a whole bunch more to explore. This is one of the things about Tantra. It's like the more you know, the more there is to know. Just like music, as I'm not a musician by any means, but I like to play a few things. And, the more that you know, the more there is to know. And I think if you're a seeker and you're somebody who gets high on higher consciousness, then this is a really phenomenal path to go down.
And it's fascinating. People have been thinking about and practicing this for thousands of years. In fact, I'm reading a book at the moment, and it tries to recreate what prehistoric life was like. And even in these prehistoric caves and dwellings, it was communal living, and it was completely accepted that people would be having pleasures, and it was just part of life. It wasn't something that was taboo or restricted, hidden away. Exactly. What are some foundations? Obviously, if you want to go on this journey, a little bit of self-awareness is required. You need to actually tune into yourself and go, this is a lifestyle I want to be curious about and cultivate. Anything else in terms of your health and your well-being? Is there a kind of optimal state for exploring further?
Well, I think that, and Willow can speak deeper on this, but you have to have a willingness, a curiosity, and an openness towards wanting to understand the world of intimacy and all that it is, all that's available to you within that. People use the word intimacy a lot, right? It gets thrown around all over the place. When people say intimacy, they often think of sexual intimacy, but intimacy comes in so many different forms. In fact, Willow and I have an episode on our podcast, the Sex Reimagined podcast, where we talk about the 12 different types of intimacy. So there's everything from like overcoming an obstacle that brings people closer together and brings a sense of intimacy. We have these experiences in life that we bond over, that creates a sense of closeness and a sense of intimacy. And in order to have intimacy, you have to cultivate three things. And trust,
vulnerability, and presence. And it's not just trust in the other person, like, oh, I trust my partner. It's trust in yourself, because you actually don't have any control over your partner or what they choose to do. They could walk away at any moment. And so you have to be able to trust yourself that no matter what happens on the outside, you're going to be able to come home to yourself. You're going to be able to come back home to your core, recenter yourself, find your essence. And, it doesn't mean that you're going to falter and you're not going to, have a refractory period, but you trust that you will be able to. And that will allow you to be way more vulnerable with the other person than if you don't trust yourself. So it's about trusting yourself with the other person. That creates a loop of vulnerability and trust between you and them, because there you are, I trust myself. And so, you get to choose who do you want to trust yourself with at that point.
Who do you want to be naked with?
Who do you want to be vulnerable with,
And not just like, physically, but metaphorically.
Yes. Naked. And then you offer that vulnerability. Vulnerability is like a gift. And if you can get really cultivated and good at it, you can offer it and just share vulnerably with the other person, which then those mirror neurons, they're like, oh my gosh, wow, that was amazing. They just shared that thing with me that's so deep and so personal. I hold that so dear. Now I feel safe to be vulnerable with them. So then we've got this loop between two souls of trust and vulnerability that's circulating, and presence just comes naturally, organically, and then you're in intimacy.
Yeah, you're having these soul-to-soul experiences, which I think is where so much depth and richness is you start to enter this world of non-duality, where you're all these stories that you have about who you are drift away. And instead you're in these states of high arousal and high connection, and you feel a sense of oneness, and you feel like, wow, I'm making love to God right now, or I'm making love to the goddess right now, I'm making love to the divine right now. It goes to those transcendent states of consciousness, and it touches you. Like it goes to your core and it changes you. It helps you see other people in the world in new and wonderful ways. You become less judgmental. You have greater access to your peace and well-being. You don't take your ego so seriously. And that doesn't mean you're going to not have all the pitfalls and trappings that it just comes with being a human being. But again, that type of practice carries over as awareness and allows you to be more self-reflective at life as a whole. So that means you're more responsible. You're more energetically responsible for yourself and
Plus,
how you
it's a
impact
lot
others.
of fun.
Yeah, and then that's it. That's just a shit ton of fun.
So fun.
At the end of the day, you can throw all the other spiritual stuff away if it's not your jam, and just have a kick-ass time.
Yeah, it's the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Just
if
have
you're in
better
a relationship,
orgasms than everyone you know. I mean, that is a byproduct.
how can you go
For no
wrong?
other reason.
I
Go
love
get
to
your
brag
kicks
about
off,
my
right?
cervical orgasms.
So if you're in a relationship and the other person is a little bit more conservative, or has their own baggage, can you embark on this journey by yourself?
Definitely. You should
Yes.
embark on it by yourself, actually. It's really good to learn this while if you're still in a single state, or you're just on your own learning it, because especially with the Taoist stuff, you're learning how to move sexual energy through meridians in your body, through pathways in your body. In Tantra, we call them nadis. So different channels, it's all the same, just moving this energy so that when you come to the table with another person, it's already in you, like it's innate within you, and you don't have to think about it and like try to figure it out with another person. I mean, enter another person and there's a whole bunch of stuff, but if it's just you and you're cultivating on your own and learning these practices, learning how to breathe, how to sound, how to move chi, how to move energy, it's called white tantra, right? So practices like yoga, qigong, meditation, anything that cultivates sense of self, those are white tantric practices. And then when we bring it together with a partner who is also bringing that element of tantric expansion union to the table, then it's a red tantra practice. But we get couples all the time who one of them is like, I really want to practice this and my partner won't do it with me. It's like, well, just do it with yourself and take it to the union, and you will surely notice a difference. And they definitely will notice a difference, and they'll get on board. It's so funny too. Sometimes couples will be, it's often the guy, and they're like, well, I don't need all that. I don't need to breathe. This is cheesy. This
No one's ever complained before.
Yeah, this sounding and breathing stuff is so corny, and then they do it and they're like, oh my God, that was amazing. They're like, can we do that more? So yeah. We see that a lot.
I think too, it is a common mistake. People think you need a partner to practice Tantra. And it's actually, it's like your white Tantra is you're practicing your instruments so you can make music with the band. And so that's what you're preparing for. In fact, there's an ancient text, the sutra, that says something like, the practice of red Tantra without the practice of white Tantra is but the copulation of eunuchs. Something's missing. Mm-hmm. So you have to, it's actually required that you have a solo practice if you want to be, a tantrika and take it to the next level. It's back to sort of like the conservative thing though. Like, I think it's really important that you don't inundate a new partner with all of this stuff all at once. It's like,
for sure,
you want to drip out the things that have had a profound impact on you. Like, let's say you're entering into a new relationship. You've practiced and dabbled a little bit. Maybe you've watched some YouTubes, maybe you took an online course, maybe you listened to a couple podcasts, and you feel inspired, like something ding, ding, ding caught your attention, and then you start to kind of play with it a little bit, and it's impacting you. Like, you get the hit. There's something in this for me. Ease a new partner into it. Watch a podcast episode together, and go to YouTube and show them a couple of your favorite clips, and then just ask them, what do you think? What arises for you, or what does this inspire you? Does it trigger you? I'm just curious your thoughts on it, and start to have a dialogue and just see what they're open for.
I went to a workshop a while back, and it was a Tantra kind of 4-week course. And it was so interesting that the focus was on just being present. It was about getting comfortable, like looking into someone's eyes. It was like these very simple things, but which will, with practice, transfer across all aspects of your life. And it's interesting that the idea of white and red Tantra, a lot of people, for them, can you imagine being a martial artist who never practices before they go and spar with someone? Exactly. Of course, you need to put in the time and effort to build up your own skills. A question for you is, why is it important for men to separate orgasm from ejaculation?
We are so undereducated on our potential of this energy. And so one of the things that most men don't know is that you can have full body orgasms. You can be multi-orgasmic as a man without tiring ejaculations. And you can separate your ejaculation from your orgasm. So is it okay if I kind of talk about the anatomy of an ejaculation? It's going to be specific, not too graphic, but I'm going to lay it down. Okay. Not sure don't want to offend anyone. So I don't think I will. The average male orgasm is 5 seconds long, give or take a second, depending on any given day. And as a man goes into climax, into the world of I'm coming soon, he's going to climb the peak of that orgasm. And the first 2.5 seconds of that orgasm, he's not ejaculating, but he's in the world of coming. It's at the 2.5 point second that sexologists say that the pubococcygeus muscles start to contract, and here comes the fluid. So it's at that point, then the ejaculation starts to move up and out of the body. And now you have another 2.5 seconds that takes you down the valley, takes you down the mountain into the valley, and then you're done. The body has to recharge. It actually has to recuperate in order for it to gather enough life force energy again to have another erection. Now, as a man ages, that refractory period from the last ejaculation to his next erection gets wider and wider and wider. And so, the testosterone levels go down, volunteer erections are less and fewer, and the harder erections are less hard. You kind of wish you had that virility of when you were in your 20s, your 30s, and your teens as you go into your 40s, your 50s, and your 60s. Well, the cool thing about Tantra and the technology that it discovered, 2,500 years ago, is that there is a way that you can harness cutting out of the wave. You go into the world of climax, but before you hit that 2.5 second point, you cut out of the wave so you don't get wiped out by that ejaculation, having lost that life force energy. Because if you're not going to create a generation every time you ejaculate with that sperm, then you want to cultivate that sexual energy. And instead of squirting it or squandering it, you harness it, and it becomes regenerative energy inside of you. So you reverse the polarity of the energy. Instead of it going out your penis, it goes up your body, it circulates to the brain, it infuses all the chakras, all the glands, all the organs, and it becomes the fountain of youth for men. So men who practice these techniques not only learn how to separate those climaxes, right? That second or two before you start to ejaculate. Now, if you cut out of the wave, how many of those 2-second orgasms can you have in one lovemaking session? You can ride that Shakti wave, baby, 5 times, 4 times, 8 times, 10 times. And then you end the lovemaking full instead of empty and depleted. And you now have to recover and recharge. And, we call it coming, but it's really like men are going. It's like, love you, babe. Everything has to shut down. So this way you get to actually stay full of that life force essence. And now again, with attention and intention, you can channel that towards more creative pursuits, that energy. So that's sort of the science behind it. And what we've seen is that it really does reverse the aging process. Men who do not ejaculate every single time they're sexual with themselves or with a partner, and they start to find their particular ratio, how many times am I sexual to how many times I ejaculate, discover 2 things. Well, multiple things, but here are the consequences of this practice. More energy for all the things you need to do in life, more presence for all the people in your life that matter, more vitality, which means firmer erections, more volunteer erections, and then a best ever every time you choose to ejaculate. Long gone are the times for a sneeze in the groin. Now we're taking it to big bliss levels. And now when you do ejaculate, you can come and come and come and come. We are going way beyond the 5-second orgasm. We are now sending that into a 20-second orgasm, a 30-second orgasm, even a 60-minute orgasm, if you know how to properly breathe and harness that climatic energy. Whew.
Well said.
Hope you guys got all
done.
that.
Yeah, we've got a course on this actually. It's called Last 10 Times Longer. So
Yeah.
for those of you who really want to learn and study this, go over to Sex Reimagine. You can find that course there. But, from a Taoist perspective, this is, your sexual energy is stored in your kidneys, and your adrenals sit right on top of your kidneys. And how many of us are running around depleted in our adrenals because we're stressed out and we're just pumping cortisol every time we're late for 5 minutes late for an appointment. So one of the ways to cultivate this sexual energy, instead of releasing 200 million sperm into the condom or the bed sheets or your partner, you can actually bring all those potential lives back up into the body. And it really, it fortifies this kidney and adrenal area in your body. So it's like, think about, you have a bank account of sexual energy. And usually when you're ejaculating, you're spending lots of money out of that bank account. When you learn how to have non-ejaculatory orgasms, you're depositing money into that bank account. So you're building your virility. And as Leah said, you're having longer, better, stronger, more phenomenal orgasms than you've ever had in your life. And you're also learning how to run that pleasure to different areas in your body so that you can actually have full body orgasms. Like your whole body becomes your cock. It's not just down between your legs. It's actually the whole body gets to experience the orgasmic bliss that your, appendage usually gets to experience. So it's a learning curve for men for sure, but it's no man who learns it ever says, gosh, that wasn't worth it.
Yeah, I'll go back to the way it was.
Never.
That does not get reported. I will say there's 2 caveats, Brad, and I think it's important to mention this is there's a learning curve to this. Your body is hardwired. It has a biological incentive for you to ejaculate because it wants you to populate the planet. It wants the species to survive. So you're going against instinct when you pull out of that wave because your system was going charge and you got to go, whoa, I'm not going to charge. I'm going to actually cool down this fire so I can stay right here and stay right present because these peak levels of arousal, again, cultivate so much intimacy between you and your partner. So you have to, practice, give yourself some time to become more masterful.
That's why you're going to practice on your own.
And you're going to have
there's techniques for that.
Yeah, there's going to be times when you ejaculate anyways. And the whole orgasm is going to be a little anticlimactic. Don't take it so seriously. Welcome to the club. It's just a part of the learning curve.
Yeah.
Additionally, your non-ejaculatory orgasms don't typically feel like an ejaculation. So what happens is a lot of men are thinking, all right, I want to become multi-orgasmic. I want to have these non-ejaculatory orgasms. And they're looking for them to feel like an ejaculation. What we're really doing is creating a whole new kind of orgasm. So you have to keep your mind open to these peak states of climaxes, then that they have, subtleties to them. They're different than your usual ejaculation.
Interesting. I remember speaking to one of my friends about this and he said, but isn't that the whole point? Why would I do this? And I guess that's how
We've
some
heard
people.
That plenty.
Yeah. That's a good question.
And on the flip side, you've got some guys, particularly younger men, who for whom an orgasm is the enemy. It's kind of like, I've got to try and prolong this for as long as possible, otherwise I'm going to disappoint someone, and then they end up disappointing themselves, and that's another whole issue. But I suppose that's where practice comes in. Practice with yourself, get used to it, ride that feeling, enjoy it. It's not the enemy.
Yeah, and rest assured that we're not suggesting that men have less pleasure, because you're right. Like, why would I rob myself of this amazing, delicious thing that makes life so much better and gives me so much relief and satisfaction and well-being? We're not actually taking pleasure away from you, we're giving you more. So it's just like, you just have to have the capacity and the patience to go through a period of a little bit of discomfort as you learn something new that you're not born good at. And one of the things you'll find in our course are like the pressure points that help you delay ejaculation, and the arousal scale that helps you kind of go up and down, and ways to communicate with your partner that doesn't put you in your head, but keeps you in your body. Yeah. So there's a way with which you and your partner can really, support each other in cultivating new types of pleasure. I mean, not only do we have these non-ejaculatory orgasms that men can have, but there are 4 known nerve pathways that go from the genitals to the brain that carry different types of orgasm. We've got the pelvic nerve, the hypogastric nerve, the pudendal nerve, and the vagus nerve. And each one of those nerves gets activated by massaging different parts of the body, different erogenous zones, and they also carry different kinds of orgasms to the brain. So when we start to play the body like a musical instrument, because we become aware and knowledgeable about how to activate these nerve plexuses and get them firing, then you can start to layer that pleasure together. You can not just have one type of orgasm, but you can stimulate multiple areas at the same time. So it's like you're eating a 4-layer cake. I mean, 1 layer is wonderful, but 4 layers, holy smokes, that goes down in the bucks. So it's just fun to be a sex geek. I think at the end of the day, that's just kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think when you approach it with curiosity and just a lot of presence, then you have a lot easier time than if you approach it with like, I've got to figure this out. I've got to, figure out my body as a man. Like I've always had orgasms this one way. Of course, when you have an orgasm, you have an ejaculation. That's what you grew up thinking and knowing. That was the only way. They go hand in hand, but they are 2 separate physiological functions. And to master non-ejaculatory orgasms, if you approach it with just like, well, let's just see, let's just play with it, have fun with it, keep it light rather than like, oh, damn, I didn't do it again. Don't get down on yourself. I mean, if you go over the edge and you have an ejaculation, then fucking ride the wave and enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the big failures in sex today is that we are way too goal oriented, and we are passing or we're failing. We're either a success or we're a failure. And so we become very neurotic around sex, and then we're judging our partner and we're judging ourselves, and we become neurotic and inadequate and all this stuff. And then suddenly we're dysfunctional and we have to go see sex therapists, and it becomes this like great drama when really at the end of the day, we know all these great techniques and they're wonderful, and you'll expand your repertoire. But what Tantra is really about at the end of the day is it's about love. And if you can learn to follow the love, the orgasms will follow. If we can bring connection as the goal and love as the goal, then orgasms find their way. I think women put a lot of pressure on themselves to be orgasmic, and oftentimes they feel like they have to fake it because it's harder to connect to. And I think men often put a lot of their I'm either adequate as a lover or I'm not if I don't make her come. And so we do these ways with which we set each other up instead of lift each other up.
And I guess a little bit of self-love helps along the way.
Exactly.
Because if you're not comfortable with yourself.
That is the love she's speaking to, yeah.
What are some of the biggest myths or misconceptions about the female arousal process?
Great question.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the clitoris is just the head of the clitoris, I think, is a big one. People think, okay, I just got to find this little bean, this little tip, and that's the clit. And the clitoris is so much more than that. The clitoris, I wish I don't have it handy right now, but I've got like a 3D model, and the clitoris and a woman's genitalia in general, we have just as much erectile tissue inch for inch and ounce for ounce as men. So when you imagine an aroused, hard, we call it a lingam in Tantra. It translates to wand of light or wand of God. So your cock, if you can imagine an aroused cock or penis, now imagine that a woman has one too. Hers is just more dispersed. We have pockets of erectile tissue instead of it being in one shaft. And so a woman's got vestibular bulbs. She's got a perineum sponge. She's got a urethral sponge. She's got a shaft of the clitoris, a hood of the clitoris, the clitoral legs, all of these, anatomy names don't really help you, but I hope it illustrates that there's a lot more to what a woman can experience pleasure-wise, but we're missing massaging it because everyone is in a hurry to get inside, where the majority of a woman's erectile tissue is actually on the outside within her vulva, and it's not just at the tip of her clit. It is dispersed. And so one of the ways, for the women who are listening, do you remember when you were kind of coming of age and you probably didn't let yourself have sex yet, and how fun it was to make out and sort of hump? I always like remember humping on a thigh in like the backseat of a car and making out, and like how hot and sexy that was. Also, like 13-year-old girls are obsessed with horse riding. Like there's a reason for this, okay? And that is because it's actually making contact to the whole vulva. And because the whole vulva has a bunch of erectile tissue, we want to make sure that the vulva itself, which is not the inside of the vagina, it's the outside, that's getting plump, that gets puffy, and that it turns a darker color. You want to see signs of that before you penetrate, because we have this horrible thing in the world. I call it premature penetration, where we're trying to get in too soon. And so women are missing out on a lot of vaginal orgasms, which are the orgasms that you can have through vaginal penetration versus just clitoral stimulation. We're missing out on some of those really deeper, more profound orgasms on the inside because we're not puffy enough on the outside. So we really want to shift how we start to open the yoni. Yoni is also a Sanskrit word for Tantra for the female genitalia, and that encompasses the vagina and the vulva and the fallopian tubes and the whole kit and caboodle. So this is just another way of going, see, there's so much we haven't been educated on. Mm-hmm. And this is one of these things that's really fun to get geeky with. It's like, wow, all this stuff. Like our mom didn't know to tell us this. She didn't know she had vestibular bulbs, for crying out loud.
Yeah. You know, when the yoni is Sanskrit for sacred space. So when you're approaching a woman's vagina, vulva and vagina, it's like, if you can approach it with reverence and if you can approach it with a sense of like, this is holy ground, you know, like, let me be present to this. Yeah. And connected to this. And even women themselves are so disconnected from their yonis. They're so disconnected from their wombs, from their vulvas, from their clitoral legs. Many women don't even know that they have 4-inch legs connected to that little nose of the clitoris. They don't know about the vestibular bulbs, so many of these aspects. And then when we go in, there's different, erogenous zones inside the vagina.
More erectile tissue inside.
Yeah, there's so much to explore, and there's so many different styles of orgasm to have. And clitoral orgasms are like the most common. And as Leah was talking about those nerve pathways, that's the pudendal nerve goes straight up to the brain, and those clitoral orgasms are great. Keep having them, don't stop. But add some more layers to the cake. Have a G-spot orgasm. Have a sacred spot orgasm. Have a cervical orgasm.
Have an anal orgasm.
Anal orgasm, and ignite those different pathways, that hypogastric and the vagus nerve. When you really ignite that pathway, you're opening up. So this vagus nerve, it's an actual physical nerve in the body. It runs right up through the midline of the body, which also is synonymous to the receptive channel. The most yin of all of your meridians runs right up through the front center of the body. So it opens your heart to this incredible experience of being able to receive the gifts that the universe is like trying to give you.
Yeah, another way of describing the vagus nerve orgasm, it's the crygasm. So if you've ever been so taken with lovemaking that you just can't help but have a tear, like that's when you know you're having a vagus nerve orgasm. It's the crygasm. It's the heartgasm.
It feels really incredible.
So it passes right through the heart.
Yeah.
And in fact, the way to activate the vagus nerve orgasm is sounding. I think one of the other things is that we're so quiet in sex because we don't want the neighbors to hear. We feel shy, uncomfortable, embarrassed. Yeah, there's shame connected to being loud.
We don't want to sound like a porn star. We don't want to feel inauthentic either. That's one of the things that keeps people quiet. But sounding is one of the things that moves sexual energy through your body so quickly and so powerfully.
And it activates the vagus nerve because the vagus nerve comes right to the throat before it enters the brain. And so when you can make the sounds of your pleasure, not only are you affirming your lover, hey, I like what you're doing. This feels really good to me. You're also ballooning your own sense of pleasure, because sound has pitch and frequency. When you connect to what does my pleasure sound like, that's what moves. It carries on the breath. That's what moves your pleasure up the body. Then it expands due to the vibration and the frequency of sound. It expands throughout the system, and it helps deliver that sound to the brain, because your brain is the biggest sex organ. It's the thing that's telling the rest of your body, hey, there's something special happening here. This is hot. This is juicy. I feel alive right now. So we want to get the sound going, because that is what builds those stronger connectors between the brain and the genitals.
Amazing. So you mentioned some other erogenous zones, things that people could pay attention to during their next intercourse session. What are they?
Anytime, all there's sort of like primary erogenous zones that are, the genitals and the nipples. And then the secondary ones can be the inner wrists, behind the ears, the inner elbows, around the ankles. Wherever there's a flexible joint. Wherever there's a joint in the body. Behind the knee is a really good one. Mm-hmm. That little fold in the gluteal crease. Mm-hmm. And then we've got the chakras. So heart chakra, throat chakra, third eye, crown, solar plexus, second chakra, and then the perineum can be a really nice secondary erogenous. And then there's a bunch of these like even minier chakras in the body that are acupuncture points along the body, along the meridians. So one really good one is right here.
Describe what you're touching.
In the inner elbow, like make out with this heart 3 point and see what happens. Or right here, this small intestine point, like suck on it and bite on it and see what that feels like to your liver. That little, each one of your fingertips has a meridian point at the very tip of it. So like suck on that and bite on that and find like where you're looking for sensation. So anything that feels sensational. I was working with a woman recently who, had scars from a cesarean and, just had always had so much shame around those scars. And when we started to actually, massage them and move the energy through them, they actually felt really pleasurable to her. So you don't know what a erogenous zone is going to be on somebody until you discover it sometimes.
Well, and if I can go a little beyond erogenous zones, I think also mindset is a very sexy thing that really activates arousal. Like for me personally, I want to feel like you are undressing me from across the room. Like I want to feel those eyes eating me up before you try to eat me up. I want to actually feel your desire from feet away. Like that's going to open my desire. So one of the things that we can pay attention to is what opens me, what closes me, what makes me want to press the gas, what makes me press the brakes. And those are really good questions to ask yourself so that you can then ask your partner, well, what does that work for you? Because so much of the time we're just stumbling and pressing on people's brakes, not even realizing that that's not connected to how they open and feel more desire. I think the other thing is that we start to learn how to explore desire. I think women in particular have a hard time naming what turns them on, having a hard time even like articulating what their desires are, because we haven't really been very permissible in our culture for women to own pleasure. There's a lot more conditioning around being selfless and all these other, they're the ones who want it, so they're the ones that should know how to do it. And so it's very strange for us to now start taking a look at our own sex lives and going, I want to be connected to my sexual sovereignty. It's my responsibility. Each individual's responsibility is I'm responsible for my orgasm. It's not my lover's job. It's when it shows up with them. Thank you. Awesome. Wonderful. But I'm going to have the best sex imaginable by understanding my own body and being responsible for my pleasure. And when you can do that, everybody wins. And we start to take that failure factor out. So again, that comes back to the solo practice and how to get to know your body and having a relationship to your own sensuality.
Love it. I'm sure people have lots more questions. How can they connect with you and find out more about your work?
Well, first of all, come to our podcast, Sex Reimagined, and we would love to have you tune in and listen. We've 1.5 million great episodes on there, or 75 as the case may be. There's so much to learn.
Yeah.
It is transforming people's lives. I was just talking to a fan the other day. She's like, your podcast changed my life. So it is definitely opening up, reimagining what's possible with sexuality is really where things start. And then you get curious and actually try things out. So you can also come to our website, sexreimagined.com. We've got a lot of great online courses there. And my website is drwillowbrown.com. Leah is moreloveworks.com. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all the social media. And we would just love to have you as part of our tribe.
Well, actually, and we have a free gift for the audience. Willow and I developed this Choose Your Own Sexual Adventure, and you can choose between 3 different trainings. One is on sexual obstacles. If you feel like you're really being challenged right now with sex issues, that's a great training. It's got, I think, 3 or 4 different trainings in it. Or you can choose the one on cultivating intimacy and closeness. And that's got some great trainings around communication and eye contact, eye gazing, all that stuff that helps you get all mushy with a lover. And then another one is sexual healing. If you were like Willow or I and have had some bumps in the road, especially around sexual trauma, here's a couple of trainings that can help you begin the healing process. And that's totally
Amazing.
free. So come on over to the website and pick an adventure.
Thank you so much for sharing that. What we will do is everything is in the show notes. So for those of you who are listening, watching, please do click those links. I love the work that you both do. It's so impactful, and I'm sure it's transformative for so many. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Just get in the arena, friends, and just start exploring. Just put your curiosity cap on and find out what's possible for you. It's never too late to start this path, and you can start it like feeling like the most broken sexual being on the planet, and you can start it at a very high elevated place, and you will surprise yourself with what you learn about your own essence.
And I would just close with, I think one of the things that really gets in our way when it comes to sex is judgment. We judge ourselves and we judge others. We judge whole communities, and that creates separation. And we can't have intimacy when we feel separate. So one of the best things you can do, and what I love, Brad, before we came on the show was, talking about how this show is really about curiosity. And one of the most beautiful things about curiosity is that it suffocates judgment. And so when you notice a judgment arising, whether that's your own inner critic or wanting to shame or judge your partner, get really curious. Go, wow, interesting that I'm feeling that way. Interesting that judgment just came up. That's, I wonder why I felt that way. And see if you can't breathe a little bit of space between your judgments, and see if you can't get really curious about going in a different direction.
Dr. Willow, Leah, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And to all of you who've stuck with us this long, thank you. And we'll see you in the next episode. See you all.